Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. I'm your host, I'm Darlene Childress, and I am a parent coach and parent educator. And today on the podcast, I am hosting another parent coach. Her name is Eileen Devine, and she is a specialist in helping support parents who are raising kids with neurobehavioral conditions. And on the pod, she talks all about what that means and who she helps, and we give really practical strategies on how to support you all. But I wanted to just introduce her before we get into it. Eileen Devine works in Portland, Oregon as a therapist and a coach supporting parents of children with special needs. She's also a consultant for families that are impacted by fetal alcohol syndrome, PANS, PANDAS, and other neurobehavioral conditions. And through her private practice, she is a licensed clinical social worker and has been working in the field of parent education for over 15 years. And she brings a very similar philosophy as mine, and that's when we understand the way a child's brain works, then we can understand the meaning behind the challenging behaviors. Like I always say, feelings drive behavior, and she's saying the way that our brain interprets the world is driving behavior. And her goal is to not only support parents in feeling more competent and confident in connecting with their child, she also wants to help support parents so they feel less lonely and less overwhelmed. So I think you're going to love this episode so much, and I invite you to take a listen. As I said in the intro, today I am having Eileen Devine on the podcast. Eileen, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I am so excited because why I love your work is because it's so aligned with what I teach on the podcast and what I teach with my clients. And it really is having a perspective that people's behavior is coming from either their emotions or, their developmental stage or what their capacity is, where their nervous system is at the time.
Yep.
And I love that you have, focused on parents who are raising kids with neurobehavioral conditions. And so I wanted to let you kind of define that for us, and then we'll get all into it. So
Sure. Yeah. So neurobehavioral conditions, it's really brains that work differently for some reason. Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't know why that is. And all of these brains that work differently, that person experiences the world differently than society expects, than oftentimes parents expect. And what that means is they're in a world that does understand they have this really significant difference that needs to be accommodated for. And so they have behavioral symptoms. So the parents that I work with have kids with brains that work differently and really challenging, relentless, exhausting, sometimes scary behavioral symptoms. And so the work that I do with them is helping them understand how their child's brain works differently because it's been impacted in some way, and what those behaviors mean so that they can parent their child in a way that is different, that accommodates for that brain difference. And what they then see over time is that those behavioral symptoms calm down. Their child begins to settle in their environments in ways that sometimes these parents have never experienced that before with their child. So that is, in a nutshell, who I work with.
yeah, that's so good. I see that too in my work, just where if you approach the child with a compassionate lens while still holding firm with the boundary, the child is able to kind of understand, like, oh, I have support here. Oh, I'm,
Mhm.
being seen, I'm being validated, I'm being understood. And that can be very challenging if you have a kid whose behaviors are really out of bounds of what we think is allowed or,
Yes.
typical. And you have, to teach boundary work in such a more exhausting, extreme way,
Yes.
I would imagine. Um,
Yes.
but it works. That's what we're doing here, is like giving hope, because it might feel as if this is so challenging and so hard, and like, is it ever going to make a difference? And you're here saying, yes, you can absolutely help your children
Yes. Yeah,
Hmm.
there is a lot of hope. I have a teenager who lives with a really serious neurobehavioral condition. And so I was fortunate enough to find this information about how to parent from this brain-based lens when she was about 3, so over a decade now. And so I have that personal experience knowing, I wouldn't do this work if there truly wasn't any hope or I didn't see things get better. But
Hmm.
many of the families that I've worked with, they're coming to this situation when their kids are middle schoolers or even high schoolers, not all of them, but many of them. So they've had, sometimes a decade of this rising tension and conflict in their home where the parents have literally tried everything to help their child, and they're left feeling like nothing works.
Hmm.
And my personal belief about that, just hearing these stories over and over again, is that so much of what these parents are given come from this very entrenched behavioral lens that we have in our society. Like your child's doing something that none of us think is good or right or appropriate, right? Maybe even unsafe, scary, right? And so the way that you do that is you use your power that you have as an adult or a parent and you try to control them. And that's really what a lot of these techniques come down to. And there's reasons, and it's all rooted in neuroscience research and what we know about the brain, why that doesn't work.
I
So,
always say it works short, it not maybe for your clientele, but it does work short term sometimes if you trigger fear or you
mhm,
trigger power over, but it
yes,
doesn't create the long term change that we're all seeking for our kids.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's also, I think, helpful for any parent who's practicing, brain first approach or, compassion first approach,
Mhm.
that it's a little bit of a long game. We're not looking for short-term compliance necessarily, right? It's
Yes.
just, yeah. And that can feel, I always say it's like you're losing the power struggle. Like, you're getting in the short term,
Yes.
it might feel that way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. We talk, the parents that I work with, we talk a lot about, yeah, I'm very upfront with them that this is not going to change overnight. And you didn't
Hmm.
get here overnight. We can't expect that. And if anyone promises you that, to run, because it's just not possible. Like what we're
Hmm.
talking about is so much more complex than that, this transformation. It's all about relationship and rewiring, right?
Hmm.
Unlearning
Hmm.
as much as you are learning new things. But what I hear you talking about, which comes up all the time, is parents' deeply held beliefs and values and what they thought it meant to parent a child of a certain age, and that in order to be a good parent, you have these expectations that no way am I going to, be flexible on that boundary or that expectation, because then I wouldn't be towing the line. I wouldn't be holding them accountable. I wouldn't be teaching responsibility. I'd be letting them get away with something, right?
Hmm.
But when we talk about accommodating our kids who have these brain-based differences and lagging skills, a really loving and compassionate and necessary accommodation is to do a real honest evaluation of the expectations you've had for them. And do they have the skills to meet those expectations? Now that you know their brain works differently in these very specific ways, is this even an appropriate expectation? So there's ways that this shows up like around chores or homework, or I say almost like lower level. It's not lower level for these parents. They're getting into these conflicts daily about these more minor expectations. But with the parents I work with, oftentimes it's like, can my child go to school? Like, is the school environment one that they can handle and navigate? And it's not their fault,
Hmm.
right? It's not just a child who's saying, oh, they're lazy, they're manipulating, they don't care about anything. That's not it at all. That environment requires things from them that they do not have the skills to meet. And so adjusting that expectation of like, maybe school isn't the right fit for my child right now. And then what? I mean, that's a major mind shift for so
Hmm.
many parents, right?
Hmm.
So helping parents make that leap, like, okay, I understand what you're saying about their brain working differently and what they may need that a neurotypical child, for example, doesn't need. But how do I make that leap into my day-to-day relationship with that child? And how do I tolerate the time that it takes, right? So going back to your point, I feel like a lot of the work I do is helping them make that leap, but also helping them tolerate the time it takes, right? But
Mhm.
one of the things I say all the time is you're not going to be working any harder, right?
That's so
It
true.
feels like a steep learning curve, but you're already working so hard. This is just about putting that energy somewhere different so that you can actually see some progress, right? Over,
Yeah. It
yep,
might actually be easier in some ways because you're not just choosing these big battles at the time.
right.
You're just kind of slowing your roll a little bit, working on a relationship, working on making sure the person feels seen, the child feels
Right.
like seen, meeting them where they are and, coaching that skill gap or supporting them in that skill gap,
Hmm.
seeing what is the skill gap here? Like,
Yes.
um, I was deep diving on your website, which is so helpful. Like any parent who's struggling, I highly recommend that you check out Eileen's website. But you can't sit for extended period of times, can't attend school regularly,
Yeah,
impulsive, doesn't do their homework, doesn't get
that's right.
tasks started independently. If the task is really complex, they can't
Hmm.
remember things, rules, routines. So instead of seeing that as something that's wrong with your child, like
That's
that
right.
they're doing it on purpose, I think that that phrase, like my kid's manipulating me, has
Yes.
been so damaging. And it's like your child wants to be seen as capable. They want to be helpful. They want to be validated. They want to be quote unquote good.
Yes.
And if they're not, then most likely there's a gap, either a skill gap or an emotional gap, right? And so when you
Yes.
slow down and you try to assess that, I would imagine you create a new playing field, you create a new baseline, but that you have actual improvement. You can get towards,
That's
move
right.
towards some new goal. Hmm.
Yes. Yeah. And some of the, like some of those examples you gave, like that's directly tied, right, to their lagging cognitive skills. But there's some that I know that parents have a little more reactivity to, like those are difficult. And also things like just being so rigid cognitively, right? Or having a low tolerance for minor frustrations, right?
Hmm.
Not
Hmm.
being able to take somebody else's perspective into view, not being able to step into somebody else's shoes, not being able to put somebody else's needs above your own, right? Like that, I find parents really leap to this perspective of that is my child's character.
Hmm.
Like they're just not turning into a good person. Like they really start to feel that level of desperation. So when we can shift and say, well, what does the brain have to do in order to be empathetic, in order to tolerate even minor frustrations, in order to just go with the flow, right?
Hmm.
It's a lot and it's really, really difficult. But that's, parents aren't taught that. I mean, I certainly, before parenting my daughter, I gave no thought to what my brain did for me every day, right? It was a privilege I lived with that I didn't even know I had. So I have a lot of empathy and compassion for the parents who come to me feeling that way about their child and not knowing what to do about it.
Yeah. And either I think a lot of parents will think, I must have done something wrong. It's my fault. I'm a bad parent, or they look for maybe in their partner or the bio parent, like,
Mhm.
oh, it's their genes or it's my genes. Like, I just think
That's
that
right.
there's a lot of trying to understand how this happened. And I'm not sure if that's helpful. It doesn't seem
Yeah.
like it seems like it would be a rabbit hole people could easily go down. Do you see that?
I do see that. And that's actually where I think it's really settling for a parent to lean on the research that shows us clearly what actually is happening. If your child has a brain that works differently, and we get all different kinds of diagnoses that
Yeah, I
confirm.
was going to ask you to give some examples for
Yeah,
people to hear what those
yeah.
could be. Hmm.
Okay. So I think some of the most common and well known, familiar are probably ADHD, autism, right? There are some, like my daughter has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, so prenatal substance exposure, prenatal trauma. So if mom is in a domestic violence situation, for example, and is pregnant, that changes the growing fetus, their development in their brain. We know that based on research. Postnatal trauma. I work with a lot of parents who have kids with neuroimmune conditions, so basically brain inflammation.
Mhm.
I work with parents who have kids with rare seizure disorders. All of those diagnoses point to the brain. Sometimes parents know what it is, or they've had a provider that have told them what it is, and sometimes they don't. And I think the really discouraging thing for a lot of parents is they relentlessly go after a diagnosis because they believe that when they get that label, it's going to tell them everything they need to know. When
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's rarely the case.
Because you're
Because if,
going to be working with the symptoms no matter what, right? The behavioral symptoms is what you're going to be uh, supporting them in and
Mhm,
parenting around, and those
that's right.
are going to be what they are. They're already you already have them.
That's right. That's right. And you
Mhm.
take a child who is of the same age with the same diagnosis and you put them side by side, there's still going to be some differences in the way their brain works differently. There will be a lot of overlap, but there's some differences there that are really important for that parent to know, right? So when you're
Mhm.
given a list of strategies, like here's a list of strategies that you use for kids with ADHD, nothing wrong with that, very well intended. And maybe a few of them do work, but the majority of them may not because it's not based on that unique child and the way that their brain works, right?
Yeah.
So when I think about these diagnoses, and I'm not anti-diagnosis, there's really important reasons to get one, medication management, for example, benefits, that kind of thing. But in the day-to-day relationship with their child, the way I encourage parents to think about it is the brain is the organizing principle. So all of those diagnoses that I just read off, they all point to the brain and say, huh, something about the brain works differently here. That's what all these people are telling us who have given this diagnosis. This is what the medical chart has shown, right? This is what I've observed as a parent. And so let's start there, that the brain works differently. Let's dive in deep into what that exactly means in terms of the way that child navigates their world, experiences the world, and how do you accommodate for that as a parent so that they experience less distress in their day to day.
Yeah.
That's where things start to get better.
Yeah. So I want to get into some of those strategies for sure, but I like my process is calm, connect, limit, set, correct. So I developed this parenting process.
Mhm.
And calm is all about the parent, right?
Mhm.
It's really
Yep.
um, being able to show up in compassion, in understanding,
Yep.
in, that from that, like, okay, this behavior is not a character problem. It's not like he's a jerk or she's a psychopath. I've had these thoughts about my own children. Both my kids have neurodivergence in ADHD, sensory
Mhm.
processing, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and moving out of that thought, you need to be out of your own like judgment and criticism and anxiety. You have to be out of it in order to get into your kid's world and then think clearly and all of that. So let's Let's talk a little bit about what you see where these parents are typically coming from, like what's their that I think parents who are listening who are like, yeah, my kid is has these issues
Yeah.
that they're like to be kind of, oh, you might be feeling this, you might be feeling that. That
Yeah.
can be very soothing, right? That you're
Yes.
normalizing that. So where do you see the parents kind of starting from, and then what are some
Yeah.
strategies for them to get to calm, as I call it?
Yeah. Yeah. So the parents that I work with, I mean, they don't come to me because things are going well, right? They come
Yeah.
to me because things are really, really awful for
Hmm.
them. And they have dwindling belief, if any, left that things will get better. And the reason is because they've, like we said before, they really have truly tried everything and nothing seems to work in terms of helping their child settle settle down or calm down or however we want to talk about that. Um, Many of the parents that I work with have truly experienced trauma in their parenting experience. And so that's a result of the hypervigilance with behaviors, explosive behaviors, oftentimes. I have parents who have described their situation as living in an abusive
Hmm.
relationship
Hmm.
that they
I had
cannot
that.
get out of.
I had
Yep.
that. I remember describing it to my friend. My son was almost 5, and we were at this like little dinner, mom dinner. And I said, I just feel like I'm being abused by my 4-year old. And I like was like crying about it. And I left that dinner and my friend said, you know, how you're feeling is not normal.
Mhm.
Like,
That's
um,
right.
it's not so it's hard. It's not supposed to be as
Yes.
hard as you're describing it. There may be
Yes.
something else going on. Obviously, I had to go to my own figure out what the heck was so triggering me about my
Yes.
son, but also he wasn't well and
Yes.
I he needed support that I was not equipped to give. And I found that
Yes.
work kind of similar to you really early.
Yeah.
And now he's 20 and great. But
You were so lucky
yeah.
to have that friend who had,
Yes.
because it sounds like she or he, I assume she,
It's
yeah.
Tiffany, everybody. Yeah, I always talk about her.
Okay. She
Mhm.
had such a unique perspective that most of the parents I work with experience exactly the opposite. Where, I mean, similar when my daughter was 3 or 4, people are like, well, that's a tough age. And I was like, no, 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 no. This is not just that tough age. Like, this is different, right?
Mhm.
And the parents that I work with have their experiences always, I mean, almost like gaslighting, right? Well, it is gaslighting a lot of experiences. So they've had relationships fall to the wayside. There's families I've worked with that have had to the parents have had to separate, not because they're unhappy with their relationship, but because they can't have the child who's struggling in the same home as the other kids. Lots of concerns about the siblings. So things are pretty, like I said, pretty terrible, pretty elevated, pretty relentless. These parents are completely exhausted.
I'm
Um,
sure and physically I see it show up physically, like a lot of
mhm,
illness or colds or body pain. You know,
mhm.
uh,
Yep, your body doesn't lie.
Yeah, yeah.
It tells you.
Depression,
Yep.
anxiety, the hypervigilance. I remember with my son, I started to implement a lot of good practices and he sort of settled and like we found different schooling options and all those things. So he
Mhm,
kind of was, his nervous system was more managed and he could access executive function.
mhm,
And I remember he was around 7, we were at the park and I had been hovering so close to him for so many years because he was aggressive and he would like hit
mhm,
kids, random kids on the park in the playground and
mhm, mhm.
put sand in their eyes. I mean, just terrible behaviors. And I was still right up on him. And
Yeah,
I remember thinking, why
yeah,
am I so like right up on him? Like why I'm
yeah,
so close to him. You know, he's like underneath the slide or whatever.
yeah,
And noticing other parents are far away and they're chit-chatting and they're having their, Starbucks. And I was like, wait, it's because he hits. I was like, wait, he hasn't really hit in a long time.
yeah,
It took
yeah.
me, I think that's what you're talking about, the trauma response.
That's
It took me
right.
a while
That's
to
right.
recognize we weren't there anymore,
Yes.
which is good. Hope for everybody. You can get
Yes.
to the other
Yeah,
side.
right, that things do get better. But yes, you get entrenched in patterns that kept you
Hmm.
safe and kept him safe and kept other kids
Hmm.
safe. And it's not surprising that it would take some conscious effort to unlearn those patterns, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And then, of course, the rage. I mean, that's my whole work is around mom rage, really. And I was so rageful. I could not figure it out. And it was my trauma of like my early childhood trauma, parenting a kid who had so many behavioral challenges
mhm.
made me feel so unsafe as a person.
Yes.
So then I was on guard to protect myself and I
Yes.
was just in a spin cycle between
That's
the
right.
two of us. So yeah, I can really identify with that pain and
Yes.
struggle that those parents are going through.
Yeah. Oh no, it definitely sounds like you can. But there's so many parents that I've worked with where their experience has never been considered before, which just blows my mind.
Hmm.
But that's why I always talk about this brain first lens that I teach parents. It has two sides of a coin. And one is about their child's unique neurobiology, how their brain works differently, and their very fragile nervous system, which is part of what you're speaking to too. And then the other side of the coin, which is at least 50%, if not more, is how they're doing and
Hmm.
their nervous system stability. Are they in that protective fight or flight state, right? How
Hmm.
has that then become this vicious, contagious cycle with their child who has this fragile nervous system, right? No wonder they're stuck in this pattern and they can't get unstuck and things are just getting worse. It all makes sense,
Hmm.
right? And that's the hopeful news too, It all makes sense.
Yes, yes. Where you're
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
is normal. And I wanted to speak for just a second. I was thinking about like the loneliness of it. That's
Hmm.
what I hear from parents I work with that have kids who are neurotypical, like
Hmm.
that you just feel nobody gets what you're going through. You say the one like cuckoo behavior, like you're like everyone's like, yeah, yeah, mine too, my kid too, ha ha ha. And then you're like, and then they grabbed a knife and then they were running towards me, and then I had to like lock myself in the garage, and everyone's like,
Yes.
"Ew."
Yes.
Ew. And mom vigilance socially is also always at play. And then the mom's like, ooh, don't play with so and so. Like they make a
Yes.
little note, and all of a sudden your kid maybe isn't invited to stuff. God, I think it's so painful and it breaks my heart.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
When I first started working with parents and I was doing my one-on-one work with them, which I still do, um, but that was all I did at the time. I kept hearing from parents over and over again, you're the only one who would believe me or could relate to like what happened today in my home. And I was like, well,
Hmm.
that's just not true because I meet with people all day that could relate. And so then I started doing group work, and I have a community called the Resilience Room. And it's specifically for that exact reason, because so many of these parents cannot find anyone who can relate to their experience. And so if you take like what keeps us well and what keeps us healthy, it's being able to be truly seen and heard, right? And have our experience validated. If something incredibly stressful is happening to you every single day of your life, and there's no one that can truly understand that or truly see you and reflect that back to you, your health is going to suffer, right? It's a biological imperative that we have that. So, this community of
Hmm.
parents that I have, they're just so wonderful about taking care of each other and showing up for each other. And it really, truly is probably the most healing work I do, right? Because it
Yeah,
is that powerful.
it is.
And the opposite side, that loneliness and isolation, is equally powerful to the detriment of their health.
Hmm. Now, I noticed on your website that Resilience Room is closed. What's that? How does
Mhm.
that work? Because I think that anyone, like, honestly, anyone listening, yeah, join my community, of course. But like, if you're in this world and you have these neurobehavioral conditions, go in Eileen's world. That's how I feel. It's
Mhm.
like, um, get this support because it is so so valuable. So what does that look like? Do you open it every once in a while? How do
Yeah.
people get in?
Yeah, so on my website, there's a place where you can sign up for the wait list, and then you get notifications about when we open. We open every 3 months or so, about 4 times a year.
Okay,
And
perfect.
the reason for that is that I like to tend to the community and allow them to come together and come together as a community, right? After each
Hmm.
opening. And so we close for a bit and kind of let people settle in. And then, yeah, several months later, I'll open again. So,
Yeah, it's that way they get to know each other. These are the new members of our community,
mhm.
and welcoming them in. That's so beautiful. And then
Mhm.
those people come in really in pain and ready and have a lot of questions, and right,
That's
they're
right.
like, yeah, so you want to kind of have a system of bringing people in and having them really supported. I love that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, so we can go in two directions. We can talk more about the like mindset shifts that need to happen for the parents, or we can get into some practical strategies of, how to handle it when your kid is losing their mind. And maybe they go together a little
I
bit.
was
Like,
going to say there probably is some overlap.
yeah, it's like, so, I've had this podcast for a long time, so longtime listeners will know some of my tools. So I like just to connect the dots for them if they're listening into some new tool, to
Mhm.
not think the thing about parent education, there's like so many things, and a lot of times
Yeah.
they're still pretty similar.
Yeah.
Um, so I teach a concept called the pause break, and it really is sort of the permission to pause, reset our nervous system, connect with ourselves. It's not an
Mhm.
emergency. I can handle this. Uh, what do I need? Then shifting
Mhm.
into connect, which is like, what do they need? Where are my kids coming from?
Mhm.
So I
Yes.
think some of the the things you're going to talk about, how to handle those in the moment challenging moments,
Yeah.
is similar to that. So just,
Very similar.
yeah,
Yeah.
just piggybacking on anyone who's listening, they're like, well, I already do the pause break. Now I got to do Eileen stuff. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
well,
no, it sounds
this
like
is,
it's right. It's
yeah,
all speaking to the same, well, the same science, right?
yes,
About our
yes,
nervous
exactly.
system.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yes, I always talk about if you can just get a second between your visceral reaction and your next, what you do next, like things,
Hmm.
there's so much hope in that pause. Right? I love how
I
you talk
know.
about it. Yeah. So we talk
I always
about,
like grow your pause, like grow your, you know, grow that reaction. Like it, yeah, 1 second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds, 45 seconds. Like you get better at it. And I remember when I was first practicing this myself and developing these tools, I would like have a watch and look at my clock,
mm,
see how much
mhm,
time has
yeah,
passed and how time, it feels like everything is happening at once
yeah,
and it's, 100 minutes by and you're like, huh, I
yeah,
paused for 20 seconds. Like it felt
yeah.
like an eternity, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yes. And giving
so
yourself
yes.
permission to,
Mhm.
yeah, to take the time that it takes. Because, I mean, again, if we go back to kind of the traditional parenting mindset or the behavioral lens or however we want to describe it, oftentimes parents feel like, oh, that was so out of bounds. That was so
Mhm.
inappropriate, so disrespectful. I must address it immediately and pretty harshly, like really reach for our power and do what we can to just bam, right? Address that
Mhm.
behavior. And that's what means it means to be a good parent who holds your child accountable,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
When what it sounds like you're giving them permission to do, and what I certainly would advise and recommend too, is there's nothing good that's going to happen when you are in that dysregulated state because it's contagious. We know that, right? So
Mhm.
giving
Mhm.
yourself the time it takes, that pause that you describe, so that
Mhm.
you can come back and truly be regulated and authentically lead from a place of empathy and compassion, right? You
Yep.
can't fake
Yep.
it.
Yep. Calm connect. I do
Yeah.
say sometimes you're gonna fake it in the beginning, and that's okay. You won't be as effective
Mhm.
with your redirect or whatever you're gonna, the way you show up, the next thing you parent, the way you parent, but it's
Mhm.
less reactive, right?
Yeah.
It's like less chaotic, less,
Yes.
and then it's not effective because your kid's like, you're not even listening to me or whatever.
Right.
And you're not
Right.
actually regulated, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, you're not as reactive.
Yes.
Like just making a little tiny incremental change is
Yes.
so powerful to the relationship, to the nervous systems involved, the amygdalas, all those things. So
Yes.
I just want to give everyone so much patience and grace. Like
Yes.
any beat you take is worth it.
That's right.
You
That's
won.
right. Yes, that's right. And when we talk about mind shifts, like here's the overlap, right, that you were alluding to. The mind shifts can become mantras in that moment, right? My child would be doing better if they could, right?
Say it
Um,
again. Say it again. Say it again.
my
So beautiful.
my child would be doing better if they could.
Mm.
Or
Yes.
this is as hard as I think it is. And
Mm,
also I'm going to be okay, right?
mm, mm,
So being able to, I mean, one of my mantras, and it was a real mind shift for me as well, they really are one and the same in many ways, was to stay soft. And what that means is when I'm
mm.
in the midst of a challenging moment with my daughter where she's really struggling, to see that as a struggle for her, pain and distress, right? She's not doing it to me on purpose. She's really struggling. And if I can stay soft in my tone of voice, in my facial, um, you know, features, my body, um, then that will allow me to be more regulated, right? She's so sensitive to any sort of tension or stress, even that I hold in my body. So being able to do that. But in that moment, it really is a waste of a parent's precious and limited energy to try to do anything else except to regulate their own nervous system, that pause that you talk about, and really allow their child to regulate. So I talk about, I mean, talk about practical skills like stop talking,
Yeah. That's like the
You're like,
first part of the pause break is literally stop
yeah,
talking.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Wait. I really love what you just said, and I want to highlight it. It's a waste of precious energy, parenting energy, to do anything but regulate
Yes,
yourself. Like
that's right. That's right.
it's like if you obviously you're overriding your own biology, right? Your own
That's right.
nervous system that's already told
Mhm.
you this is an emergency. And obviously, a kid running around a knife feels like an emergency. Some of these
Yes.
behaviors that people are dealing with in this population they can be very, very extreme. We're not getting into it because then that's like, like parenting porn or whatever they call it. Like, we don't want to do that. Um, but we know that families are in the shits. Like, it is not great what they are
Yes.
dealing with. And it is so hard for our brain to think, I can deal with this later.
Yes. Yes. Well,
Mhm.
and maybe also, I mean, the other maybe mind shift is I am dealing with this.
Mm,
I'm not waiting till later. I am dealing with this. It's just in a very, very different way than we were ever taught to quote unquote deal with challenging behaviors,
Oh
right?
my God, that's
There's
so good.
nothing that can happen without noticing what's happening within us first, right? So if we are already in that reactive mode, letting that visceral reaction take over, it's like, well, that's probably not going to lead to a great place. The chances are
Mhm.
not good, right? The other piece that I think is really important for parents to understand is that safety first, obviously.
Yeah.
After that, being regulated as a parent does not mean you think everything's okay. It doesn't
Yes.
mean like, oh, I'm just happy with this behavior that's happening.
Well, it's
That's not
okay
what
for
it's
you
about.
to break the dog door down whenever you feel upset. That's
Yeah.
fine. No problem. Like, just break windows, however
Yeah.
you regulate yourself. I'm here for you.
Right.
And that's okay. It says
Yes.
no parent educator ever.
No, no. But it's a real big misconception.
It
Like,
is.
I'm going to be
Mhm.
regulated. No, that's permissive. That's saying I'm okay with what's happening and I'm not cool with that. Understandably,
It's like,
right?
I'm okay with you. You're
Hmm.
okay, kid. I'm okay with you.
Hmm.
We're gonna work on these behaviors, right? It's
Hmm.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I am dealing with this. That just like blew my mind because I do teach. I'm gonna do something about this later, and like as a way to calm, so we don't get into the emergency of like I call it fix it, change it, stop it, solve it. Like, we don't have to get all
Hmm.
stop it, don't
Hmm.
do that, you know.
That's
And
right.
I'm going to deal with this behavior later. I love this new one. Like, I am dealing with this, like, by staying regulated. I
That's the
am
first step.
dealing with this by connecting first. Like,
That's right.
that's so empowering. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, the piece about lagging cognitive skills that we started out talking about, oftentimes parents think like, oh, I've got to do something about that in the moment, like identify the
Mhm.
lagging skill and accommodate. And it's like, nope, that is not the time. Like that's
Mhm.
all outside of the moment. When the storm
Mhm.
has passed, you have a few minutes to
Yeah.
yourself like, okay, what just happened there? How can I trace it back to the very, very, very beginning of when I started to see my child get just even a little bit agitated or whatever it looks like for them?
Mhm.
And what might that have to do with their unique brain function? Like, what does that
Yeah.
have to do with their lagging skills? And how will I then use that information to put in accommodations proactively so that next time this situation inevitably comes up again, because it will, I have those different supports in place. I've scaffolded in some way, I've adjusted expectations in some way, whatever it might be, right? That's the other piece of
Yeah.
it. That problem solving, I can't, you rattled it off a moment ago, but the problem
Fix
solving
to
piece of
change
it.
solve it.
Yeah. That to me is like outside the moment.
Uh-huh.
That's
Uh-huh.
what we
Uh-huh.
do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I've been trying to think about that in my own work because I have this calm mama process, and it's like, yeah, it's like in the moment and out of the moment. You practice both, but it looks different. And
Hmm.
limit set is really how I teach it, but it's the similar. It's like, okay, where's the skill gap? Where's the value gap? Like,
Hmm.
sometimes I don't know that I don't want to get onto the content, but it's like, where's the gap here and what kind of do I need to put into place? Either some new rules. I don't know how you teach rules. We do not have to get into it, but some new rules here or some new support or and then
Mhm.
but it still has to be I'm regulated and calm, coming from it that place that I'm okay.
Yeah,
I see my child is struggling, working on it. Now what are we going to
yeah.
do differently in the future? And
Mhm.
I like how you teach it where it's like in the moment and then outside the moment. Like there's
Yeah,
two strategies doing similar work within. Like you handle the in the moment like this and then you go back. And so
yes.
I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about that sort back and like what are some of the things that you teach parents and how do you teach parents to teach their kids?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. So I help parents understand where their child's lagging skills are. And so if we
Mhm,
know, we know every behavior is connected to our brain. And so parents are like, well, that's cool, but how do I begin to make sense of that for
mhm,
my child? So we get really crystal clear on what lagging skills their child has. Is it executive function or language and communication or emotional regulation or sensory processing? Like, is it all of that, right?
mhm.
And then we start to look at the tasks and the expectations they have for their child and ask that question: what does the brain have to do in order to be successful in meeting that expectation or completing that task? And does your child have that skill? And 99% of the time, it's like, oh, okay, now I see there's a poor fit. They don't have the skill. No wonder there's this chronic frustration that comes out as explosiveness or shutting down or extreme anxiety. Like, now I get it. That behavior is now making more sense to me. And so we talk about accommodations, just like we would with any child who has a physical difference. How do
Yeah.
you put those into place? So that's a lot of that kind of one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is helping parents ease into the acceptance of who their child is. What does that mean for them? What does it mean for their child? And how do they set themselves up so that they have the endurance to parent this really unique child from this lens that many people in our society don't understand for the remainder of their life as a parent of this child, right? So
Mhm.
that's no easy task for any parent.
Yeah.
So needing a lot of
I'm
support.
thinking of when my one of my kids has an eating disorder called AFRID. Sure
Mhm.
you're familiar with it. It's avoidant food restrictive intake disorder.
Yep.
And when I took him to OT and I learned that there's like 27 steps to eating,
That's
like
right.
so many things that have to
That's
like
right.
you have to be willing to be in the room with food and then look at the food and
That's
smell the
right.
food and touch the food. Like there was like all these steps that I didn't see. I just was like, you sit down and you eat. The eating, the complex part of eating is chewing and swallowing, right? That's like kind of what I thought. And
Mhm.
then I got all this education and I was like, oh, so let's start where they're at and just practice being in the room when there's this
That's
uh,
right.
smell is present, you know.
That's right.
And
That's right.
that was really helpful because then I wasn't so upset about the end, like, oh, why aren't we here? It's like, oh, because there's a bunch of things that we need to practice first
Mm,
before we get to the, you know, the the um the holy grail of,
that's right.
eating mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving or whatever it
Yes.
was,
Yes, that's
Which by the
right.
way, we're not there. Like that's just the truth is the acceptance piece of
Yes.
like this is someone who's going to have to work through this for their lifetime and figure out
Yes.
their own relationship to whatever it is. Um, letting that go. I remember my son being 10 and just finally saying, I'm not going to fight this anymore.
Mm,
It's
mhm,
ruining me. It's ruining our relationship. I just went Cal and that's it.
mhm.
Like person
Yeah.
alive. And my standard was so low. And other people were like, you're letting him have ice cream? Did he eat his
Mm,
hamburger? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, there's calories in ice cream. Great. He's going to live.
Yeah,
He's going to have some food in his belly. Yeah.
that's right.
So I think that's where we have to be willing to like figure out what works, where we're at,
Well, and
or
what I hear you talking about is it's great that we have high priorities as parents, but some of us don't have the luxury of holding all those high priorities at the same time. We have to decide what's highest priority. And
Mhm.
you mentioned this low standard, and what I hear is
Mm,
you have this very highest priority that he get food in his belly. And so you adjusted that. You didn't lower it to some embarrassing level. You adjusted it so that you could meet that highest priority of getting
mhm.
him some sort of nutrition, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a shift for
And it's
so
so,
many
you
parents.
cannot, I think, I'm just like a regular mom in a regular community with regular kids. And that's what a lot of the parents that we're talking about, they're just regular humans trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's not, you don't owe everyone an explanation. I think that's also helpful. It's like, you know, the, you don't have to explain everything to everybody. It's like, yep, no, this works
Right.
for our family. Thanks.
That's right. Yep. Again, managing your precious energy.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Well, this has been extremely valuable for me. So, yay,
Hmm.
yay.
Great. I'm so
Um,
glad.
which means that I know everyone's going to love it. And anyone who has a kid with neurobehavioral condition, absolutely seek out Eileen. So, you have a coaching program, you have private sessions that you do, you have a course I saw on
Hmm.
your website. People can buy a
Yeah.
self-guided course. You have the
Hmm.
community, the resilience room, getting in on that and getting in when the doors open. And then there's a lot of great resources on your website. You have an audio course, which is awesome, and that's for free. And then just tons of great source like on your blog. So a deep dive into Eileen's work if you're at all doing this. So the website is Eileen Devine, and it's spelled Eileen Devine, Devine. And how can people find you on social? What are your
Yeah.
handles?
So I'm on Instagram and it's Eileen Devine Brain First. If you just type that in, you'll find it. And then also Facebook, just with my name, Eileen Devine. And it says therapist and coach, but you'd find me if you just type that in. So those are the two places I hang out for the most part.
Yeah. Okay, good, good, good. Well, thank you so much. I love meeting like a like-minded parent educator and to work with like, talk to someone who's doing similar work. And I'm grateful for you for what you do and what you're offering to your
Hmm.
community.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to
Yeah.
talk with you. I'm glad we were able to connect. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everyone. So this week, get back into the pause break, all of you. You need to be remembering, go back to early episodes, review that, and check out Eileen's website. And I will talk to you next time. Hey, Mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do two things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that again at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies, just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.